Captain Daeho Kim stared at the view screen, watching the stars bend and twist in ways that made his stomach turn. The Calveth Nebula stretched before them like a painting made of purple and gold gases, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. He had been in space for 12 years, but nothing prepared him for this place. "Captain, we're picking up strange readings," said Jiwon Park from her station. She was the best engineer Daeho had ever worked with, young but sharp as a knife. Her fingers moved across the controls without hesitation. "Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Daeho walked over to her station. The numbers on her screen made no sense. Power readings that should have been impossible. Could it be a malfunction? "I've checked 3 times, Jiwon replied. Her voice was steady, but Daeho could see the tension in her shoulders. "It's real, and it's coming from everywhere at once." On the bridge, the rest of the crew worked in silence. They all knew the stories. Everyone in human space knew about the Valorum, ancient beings who had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Gods who could destroy ships with a thought, immortals who had never lost a battle. 2 weeks ago, a colony ship called the New Dawn had crossed into this nebula by accident. Their navigation system had failed, and they drifted into forbidden space. The Valorum response was immediate. A single ship appeared, massive and dark, shaped like nothing humans had ever built. It simply floated beside the New Dawn for 10 minutes. Then a message came through in perfect human language. "You have 3 cycles to leave this space. If you remain, you will cease to exist." The New Dawn fled. When they reached human territory, the crew was examined by doctors. All of them showed signs of extreme psychological trauma. Some refused to speak. Others could only repeat the same words over and over. "We saw gods. We saw gods." Earth's government debated for days. Some wanted to apologize and promise never to enter Valorum space again. Others argued that running would make humanity look weak. In the end, they decided to send a reconnaissance team. Someone had to learn more about these beings. Someone had to see if the legends were true. Daeho volunteered immediately. So did his crew. "Contact," said Lieutenant Minho Kang from the pilot station. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, barely 26, but he could fly anything with engines. 3 objects approaching from bearing 270. "On screen," Daeho ordered. The view screen shifted. 3 shapes moved through the nebula toward them. They were not ships in any traditional sense. They looked organic, like creatures that swam through space instead of flying through it. Each one was at least twice the size of Daeho's cruiser, the Resilient. "They're not attacking," said Commander Heejin Choi. She stood beside Daeho, calm as always. Heejin had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Titan blockade. Nothing seemed to shake her. "Just observing. Should we hail them?" asked Minho. Before Daeho could answer, all the screens on the bridge went white. Not blank white, like someone had turned on lights too bright to look at. Then words appeared, hovering in the air itself, written in letters that seemed to burn. "You were warned. You did not listen. Now you will witness." The words vanished. The view screen returned to normal. But now ahead of them, space itself seemed to be changing. The asteroid field that had been drifting lazily through the nebula began to move. Rocks the size of mountains shifted position. They did not tumble or spin randomly. They moved with purpose, arranging themselves into a perfect geometric pattern. "What are we seeing?" whispered Heejin. Jiwon's hands flew across her controls. "The asteroids are being moved by some kind of directed energy field. The power required for this—" She stopped, shaking her head. "It's impossible. Even our most advanced reactors couldn't generate 1% of this energy." The asteroids continued to rearrange themselves. Within 5 minutes, they had formed a structure. A perfect sphere made of thousands of massive rocks, all holding position without touching. In the center of the sphere, a light began to glow. "Captain," said Minho, his voice tight with fear, "we should leave." "Right now," Daeho wanted to agree. Every instinct told him to run. But he was here for a reason. Earth needed information. "Hold position," he said quietly. The light in the center of the sphere grew brighter. Then it exploded outward. But it was not an explosion of force. It was an explosion of transformation. The asteroids dissolved, breaking apart into dust. The dust reformed into new shapes, ships, dozens of them, identical in design, appearing from nothing. Then they vanished, and the asteroids returned to their original positions, drifting as if nothing had happened. Another message appeared in burning letters. "This is the least of our power. Leave now. This is your final warning." The bridge was silent. Daeho could hear his own heartbeat. He looked at his crew. Minho was pale, gripping his controls. Heijin's face showed no emotion, but her jaw was tight. Jiwon stared at her screens, her mind clearly racing. Set course for home, Daeho said finally. Maximum speed. As the Resilient turned away from the nebula, Jiwon suddenly spoke up. Captain, I need to show you something. Daeho walked back to her station. She pulled up a series of readings from the demonstration they had just witnessed. Look at this, she said, pointing to specific data. The energy signatures. They follow patterns. Mathematical patterns. So? Daeho asked. So they're not random. They're not magic. This is technology, Captain. Very advanced technology, but still technology. She looked up at him, and for the first time since entering the nebula, he saw something other than fear in her eyes. He saw curiosity. If it's technology, it can be understood. And if it can be understood, it can be countered. Daeho looked back at the nebula, now shrinking behind them. The Valorum had tried to terrify them, and they had succeeded. But Jiwon was right. Everything they had seen could be explained by science, not magic. The Valorum wanted humanity to believe they were gods, but gods did not need to make threats. Gods did not need to give warnings. Gods simply acted, compile everything we recorded, Daeho said. Every sensor reading, every energy signature, every piece of data. When we get home, we're going to find out what they're really hiding. 3 days later, the Resilient reached Earth. Daeho delivered his report to the United Earth Defense Force Command. He told them everything. The impossible power. The casual demonstration of force. The warning. Then he told them about Jiwon's analysis. About the patterns in the energy readings. About the fact that everything they saw was technology, not divine power. The admirals listened in silence. When he finished, they asked him one question. Captain Kim, do you believe we can fight them? Daeho thought about the asteroid field rearranging itself. The impossible display of power. The burning words in space. Then he thought about Jiwon's data. About patterns in mathematics. About technology that could be understood. I believe we can learn about them, he said. And if we can learn, we can find weaknesses. Even gods can bleed if they're not really gods. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then the fleet admiral spoke. Prepare your crew, Captain. You're going back. The second mission into Valorum space began 3 months after the first. This time Daeho commanded a small fleet of 4 ships. The Resilient, 2 frigates and 1 stealth reconnaissance vessel called the Whisper. They had new orders. Gather intelligence, avoid contact, and return with answers. Jiwon had spent those 3 months working day and night. She barely slept, barely ate. All she did was study the data they had collected. She built new sensors, designed new scanning equipment, and developed theories about how Valorum technology worked. When the fleet departed, her station was covered in 3 times as many screens as before. We're approaching the nebula edge, Minho reported. He sat at the helm. His hands relaxed on the controls, but his eyes were sharp. No contacts yet. Keep us in the deepest parts of the gas clouds, Heijin said. She had been promoted to mission commander for this operation. If they can't see us, they can't warn us to leave. The fleet slipped into the Calveth Nebula like shadows. The thick gas provided cover, and Jiwon's new sensor baffles made them almost invisible to scans. For 2 days, they moved deeper into Valorum territory, seeing nothing but empty space and ancient stars. On the 3rd day, they found something, Captain. There's a planet ahead, said Minho. It's not on any of our charts. Daeho studied the image on the screen. The planet was gray and lifeless, covered in what looked like ruins. Massive structures jutted from the surface, broken and weathered. Any signs of activity? Negative, said Jiwon. No power readings, no heat signatures. This place is dead. Dead, but maybe not empty, Heijin said. I want to send a team down. 6 hours later, Daeho stood on the surface of the dead world. The ruins around him were enormous. Buildings that must have stood a mile high, now crumbled to fragments. Roads that stretched to the horizon, cracked and overgrown with strange crystalline formations. Everything was old. Not decades old or even centuries old. This place had been dead for thousands of years. These are Valorum structures, Jiwon said, scanning one of the buildings. She wore a full environment suit, her voice coming through the helmet radio. The architectural style matches what we saw on their ships. But it's destroyed, said Specialist Suman Lee, one of the Marines who had joined the landing party. She was young, on her first deep space mission, and she looked around nervously. I thought the Valorum were immortal. I thought they never lost. That's what they want everyone to believe, Deho said. He walked to what had been a doorway and looked inside. More ruins, more destruction. But this place tells a different story. They spent hours exploring. They found more evidence of collapse, weapon scarring on walls, signs of evacuation, and in one underground facility they found something that changed everything. Bodies, dozens of them, preserved in the dry, cold atmosphere. They were tall, elegant beings with forearms and faces that seemed almost human, but they were definitely dead. Long dead. So much for immortality, Minho said quietly. Jiwon was already scanning them with every piece of equipment she had. Their biology is fascinating. They have redundant organs, enhanced cellular repair systems, and what looks like cybernetic enhancements integrated into their nervous systems. But they're organic. They can die. What killed them? Asked Suman. Hard to say without more analysis. But look at this. Jiwon pointed to one of the bodies. It wore some kind of armor, but the armor had been torn apart by massive force. Whatever they fought, it was strong enough to kill them even with all their technology. Over the next week, the fleet found 3 more dead worlds. All showed the same signs. Ancient Valorum civilizations destroyed by war or disaster. The pattern was clear. The Valorum were not invincible. They had lost before. They could lose again. But the most important discovery came from Jiwon's analysis of the ruins. She found traces of the energy systems the Valorum used, massive power conduits running through the planets connecting to stations in orbit. Everything linked together in a vast network. Look at this, she said to Deho one evening, showing him her findings. The Valorum don't generate power on individual ships. They draw it from a centralized network. That's how they can do impossible things. They're not using ship-based reactors. They're tapping into something much bigger. A weakness, Hyejin said, studying the data. She had joined them in the lab. If we can find the source of their power, we can disrupt it. Or destroy it, Minho added. He had been listening from the doorway. Deho nodded slowly. Keep analyzing. We need to know more before we can plan anything. On the 15th day of the mission, their luck ran out. The Whisper, the stealth ship, was conducting a deep scan of an asteroid field when it detected a Valorum patrol. 2 ships, smaller than the massive vessels they had seen before, but still dangerous. The patrol was moving in a search pattern. They're looking for something, Hyejin said. Maybe us. The Whisper is pulling back, Minho reported. But the patrol is... Wait, they're changing course. They're going after the Whisper. How? Jiwon asked. The stealth systems should make it invisible. Should, Minho said grimly. But they've found it anyway. Deho made a decision. All ships move to intercept. We can't let them capture the Whisper. The fleet accelerated out of the gas cloud, weapons charging. But before they could reach the Whisper, one of the Valorum ships fired. A beam of purple energy lanced across space and struck the small reconnaissance vessel. The Whisper's shields flared, held for a moment, then collapsed. The second shot punched through the hull. The Whisper is venting atmosphere, Minho said, his voice tight. They're hit bad. Get us between them and the Whisper, Deho ordered. Now, the Resilient surged forward. Deho's 2 frigates opened fire on the Valorum patrol ships, missiles and railgun rounds streaking through space. The Valorum ships dodged effortlessly, their movements impossibly graceful. They returned fire, and one of the frigates took a direct hit. Its shields held, but barely. We can't win this fight, Hyejin said. We need to retreat. Not without survivors from the Whisper, Deho replied. Minho, get us alongside them. Prepare for emergency docking. What happened next took less than 3 minutes, but felt like hours. Minho flew the Resilient through a storm of enemy fire, his hands moving faster than thought. The ship shuddered with impacts. Alarms screamed, but he got them to the Whisper. The docking clamps locked on. Marines rushed through the airlock. They pulled out 7 survivors, including the ship's captain, Lieutenant Taejin Bey. He was bleeding from a head wound, but alive. Go, 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 Deho shouted. The Resilient broke away from the dying Whisper. The 2 frigates laid down covering fire, and then they ran, diving back into the gas clouds, the Valorum ships pursuing. For 6 hours they played a deadly game of cat and mouse in the nebula. The Valorum ships were faster, more powerful, but the gas clouds hid the human vessels. Finally, they lost their pursuers and made it to the nebula's edge. As they crossed back into human space, Deho looked at the data they had gathered. Dead worlds, ancient bodies, evidence that the Valorum could be killed, And most importantly, information about their power network. Was it worth it? Minho asked quietly. He looked exhausted, his usual confidence shaken. We lost the whisper. 8 people died. Deho thought about the question. About the price they had paid. About what they had learned. Ask me that question after we use what we found, he said finally. If this intelligence helps us survive what's coming, then yes, it was worth it. Hyejin was already composing her report to Earth Command. They know we're investigating them now. They'll be prepared for us next time. Good, Jiwon said. Everyone turned to look at her. She was staring at her screens, at the data about the Valorum power network. Because next time, we'll be prepared for them too, and we'll know exactly where to hit them. The fleet limped back to Earth. When they arrived, Deho delivered a new report. This time he had more than observations. He had evidence. The Valorum could die. The Valorum had weaknesses. And most importantly, the Valorum were not gods. They were just very old, very advanced beings who had convinced the galaxy they were invincible, but humanity had never been good at believing in gods. The war began not with a battle, but with a declaration. 3 months after Deho's second expedition, every communication system in human space received the same message simultaneously. It appeared on military channels, civilian broadcasts, personal devices, even on screens that were powered off. The message was simple and terrifying. You have defied our warnings. You have trespassed in sacred space. You have disturbed the resting places of our ancestors. For these crimes, your species will be judged. We are coming to your world. We are coming to Earth. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. You will learn why we are called eternal. The message played once, then vanished. Every screen that had displayed it went permanently dark, burned out from the inside. Panic spread across human space like wildfire. Some colonies tried to evacuate. Others prepared defenses. Most people simply waited, terrified, knowing that legends were coming to destroy them. Earth's government mobilized everything. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They had 47 combat vessels that could fight in deep space. Against the Valorum, it was nothing. But it was all they had. Deho stood in the briefing room with 100 other officers. The fleet admiral was speaking, but Deho barely heard the words. He was thinking about the dead worlds he had seen, about the bodies in the ruins. The Valorum could be killed. They had to remember that. They had to make everyone remember that. Captain Kim, the admiral said, pulling Deho from his thoughts. Your report mentioned a centralized power network. Have we located it? Jiwon stepped forward. She had been working without sleep for weeks, and it showed. Her eyes were red, her movements exhausted, but her voice was steady. Yes, Admiral. We've analyzed all the data. The Valorum power network has a central nexus located deep in the Calveth Nebula. Every Valorum ship, every weapon, every system draws energy from this point. It's like a heart. If we can destroy it, we can cripple their entire civilization. And the cost of such an attack? The Admiral asked. Hyejin answered that question. She had been promoted to Rear Admiral for this operation. It would require a strike force to penetrate deep into enemy territory, past their defenses, past their patrols, straight to the most protected point in their space. Survival chances are less than 10%. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. It was a suicide mission. I'll go, Deho said immediately. So will I, said Minho from across the room. And me, added Jiwon. Dozens of other voices joined them. Officers and crew members volunteering for a mission they would probably never return from. Deho felt something tighten in his chest. Pride and sorrow mixed together. The Admiral looked at them all, these volunteers who knew they were choosing death. Very well. We'll give you everything we can. 12 ships. Our best weapons. Our fastest engines. But understand this. The Valorum fleet is already moving toward Earth. They'll be here in 30 days. If you fail, there will be no second chance. Then we won't fail, Deho said. 10 days later, the strike force departed. 12 ships against an empire that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. It should have been absurd. It should have been hopeless. But the crews loaded into their ships with grim determination. They knew the odds. They went anyway. The Resilient led the formation, Deho on the bridge. Jiwon had upgraded every system, pushed every engine beyond its rated limits. The ship hummed with barely contained power. Beside them flew frigates, destroyers, and one heavy cruiser called the Defiant. Each ship carried the best crew humanity could muster. Among them was Private Suman Lee, now serving on the Resilience Marine Detachment. She had volunteered immediately when she heard about the mission. Her parents had tried to talk her out of it. She was only 22. She had her whole life ahead of her, but she refused to stay behind while others fought for Earth's survival. First contact in 3 hours, Minho reported from the helm. He seemed calm, almost cheerful. Deho wondered if it was real or just a mask. The Valorum must know we're coming by now. Let them know, Hyejin said from the tactical station. Let them scramble their defenses. While they're focused on us, the Valorum Warfleet will have to split their attention. That was the real plan. The strike force was not just attacking the Nexus. They were a distraction. If the Valorum sent ships to defend their heart, fewer ships would reach Earth. If they ignored the strike force and continued to Earth, humanity might actually destroy the Nexus. Either way, Earth gained time to prepare, time to fight, time to survive. The first Valorum ships appeared exactly on schedule. 6 vessels, each one massive and dark, moving through space like hunting predators. They spread out in a net formation, trying to surround the human fleet. All ships break formation, Hyejin commanded. Execute scatter pattern Delta. The 12 human ships split apart, each one moving in a different direction. The Valorum ships hesitated, uncertain which target to pursue. In that moment of confusion, the humans struck. Missiles streaked across space. Railgun rounds, moving at a fraction of light speed, slammed into Valorum shields. Energy beams from the human ships focused fire on a single enemy vessel. The Valorum ship's shields flared, held, then began to crack. They're not invincible, Deho said, watching the enemy shield fail. Keep hitting them. The Valorum returned fire and the battle turned into chaos. Purple energy beams crisscrossed space. Explosions bloomed like flowers. The human destroyer Courage took a direct hit and exploded, its crew dead before they could even scream. The frigate Swift lost its engines and began to tumble helplessly through space, but the focused human attack worked. The Valorum ship with damaged shields tried to retreat. The Defiant pursued, pouring fire into the weakened vessel. For a moment, Deho thought they might actually destroy it. Then the Valorum ship did something impossible. It simply vanished, not destroyed, not exploded. It disappeared, as if it had never been there at all. What just happened? Minho demanded. Some kind of emergency jump, Jiwon said, studying her sensors. They can teleport short distances. That's new, and problematic, Hyejin added. If they can escape any fight, we can't destroy them. Then we don't try to destroy them, Deho said. We run past them. All ships maximum speed. Ignore the enemy. Our target is the Nexus. The human fleet accelerated, abandoning the fight. The Valorum ships pursued, firing continuously. The frigate Dancing Blade took too many hits and exploded. The destroyer Thunder lost half its hull to a direct strike but kept flying, its crew refusing to stop. For 3 hours they ran. The Valorum ships chased them deeper into the nebula. More human ships took damage. More systems failed. But they kept going, driven by desperation and determination. Finally, they reached the inner nebula. And there, ahead of them, they saw it. The Valorum Nexus was like nothing human eyes had ever witnessed. It was a structure that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension. Massive rings of energy rotated around a central core that blazed like a captured star. Streams of power flowed outward from it, feeding into massive conduits that stretched into the distance. Around it orbited hundreds of smaller stations, each one a fortress bristling with weapons. That's impossible, Minho whispered. How do we fight that? We don't fight it, Jiwon said. She was smiling despite everything. Despite the death and destruction around them. We break it. Look at the energy flows. See how they all connect to the central core? That's the weak point. If we can overload that core, the whole network will collapse. How do we overload it? Deho asked. We crash a ship into it at full speed with reactors set to detonate, Hyejin said. She had already run the calculations. The energy release should be enough to destabilize the core. Everyone understood what that meant. Someone would have to pilot a ship on a suicide run. Someone would have to fly straight into the heart of that impossible structure and die to save Earth. I'll do it, said a voice over the fleet channel. It was Captain Kangman Seo of the destroyer Thunder, the ship that had lost half its hull in the chase. My ship is already dead. We're running on backup systems, but we can still fly, and we can still fight. Captain Seo, Daho began, but Kangman cut him off. "This is why we came, Captain Kim. This is why we all volunteered. So someone finish this. Make it count." The Thunder turned toward the Nexus. Its engines, pushed beyond any safe limit, burned white-hot. Valorum stations fired at it, tearing away more of its hull. But the Thunder kept flying, kept accelerating, kept going forward. The rest of the fleet engaged the Valorum defenses, trying to draw fire away from the Thunder. Ships exploded. People died. The battle became a storm of violence and sacrifice, and through it all, the Thunder flew toward the heart of the Nexus, carrying its crew into legend. The Thunder struck the Nexus core like a hammer hitting glass. For a single moment, everything stopped. No sound, no movement, no light, just silence. Then the core exploded outward in a wave of impossible energy. The blast wave expanded in slow motion, tearing apart the orbital stations, ripping through the conduits, unmaking the structure that had powered the Valorum Empire for millennia. On the Resilience Bridge, every screen went white. Alarms screamed. The ship shook so hard that Daho was thrown from his chair. When his vision cleared, he saw the aftermath. The Nexus was gone. In its place was an expanding cloud of debris and radiation. The energy streams that had stretched across the nebula were collapsing, folding in on themselves like dying stars. And all around them, Valorum ships were going dark. "It worked," Jiwon said, her voice filled with awe. "The network is failing. They're losing power across their entire civilization." "The Valorum defense fleet is retreating," Hyejin reported. "Their ships are dead in space. They're drifting." Minho let out a breath he had been holding since the Thunder's final run. "We did it. We actually did it." But Daho was not celebrating. He was thinking about Captain Kangman Seo and his crew, about the courage and its lost souls, about the dancing blade and all the others who had died to make this moment possible. Victory had a price. It always did. "Get me a status report on all remaining ships," he ordered. "Then set course for the nearest Valorum command station. We need to verify the extent of the damage." 6 ships remained from their original 12. All were damaged. All had lost crew. But they were still flying, still fighting. They moved through the nebula like sharks circling wounded prey, searching for confirmation of their victory. They found it at a massive Valorum command station orbiting a purple gas giant. The station was dark, its lights flickering. Escape pods were launching from it in every direction. The mighty Valorum were abandoning their posts. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said the communications officer. "It's coming from inside the station. It's in human language." "On speakers," Daho said. A voice filled the bridge. It was strange, with harmonics that human vocal cords could not produce, but the words were clear. "Human vessels, please respond. I am Rythak of the station garrison. I need to speak with your commander. I have information about the Valorum fleet heading to your world." Hyejin and Daho exchanged glances. "Could be a trap," she said. "Or it could be our only way to stop the fleet attacking Earth," Daho replied. He activated the transmitter. "This is Captain Daho Kim of the United Earth Defense Force. I'm listening. Captain Kim, my people are defeated. The power network is destroyed. But the fleet heading to Earth does not know this yet. They are too far away for the network collapse to affect them immediately. They will reach your planet in 20 days, and they will be very angry." "Why are you telling us this?" Daho asked. "Because I do not wish to see genocide," Rythak said. "My people have ruled through fear for too long. We convinced the galaxy we were gods. We convinced ourselves. But you have proven we are not divine. And some of us are grateful for that truth no matter how painful it is." "What do you suggest?" Hyejin asked. "Come to the station. Meet with me and others who share my view. We can help you understand Valorum tactics, technology, and weaknesses. We can help you survive the coming battle." It was Minho who spoke the concern they all felt. "How do we know you won't just kill us the moment we board?" "You don't," Rythak admitted. "But I am a soldier, like you. I have watched my civilization decay for centuries while we pretended to be eternal. I am tired of the lies. I am tired of the fear. I would rather help build something new than die defending something rotten. Daeho made his decision. I'm coming over with a small team. If you betray us, my fleet will destroy this station. Understood, Captain. I will be waiting in Docking Bay 7. 2 hours later, Daeho stood in a Valorum docking bay. It was vast, designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them directly. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet that he could not identify. With him were Jiwon, Suman, and 4 other Marines. All were armed, all were ready for a trap. But when Rythak appeared, he was alone and unarmed. The Valorum was tall, perhaps 8 feet, with 4 arms and a face that was beautiful in an alien way. He wore armor that was powered down, decorative rather than functional. When he saw the humans, he made a gesture that might have been a bow. Captain Kim, thank you for trusting me. I don't trust you, Daeho said bluntly. But I'm here. Talk. Rythak led them through the station. As they walked, he explained, the Valorum had once been a proud warrior species, conquering through strength and technology. But over time, they had faced enemies they could not defeat. Plagues that killed millions. Wars that devastated their worlds. Instead of adapting, the Valorum leaders decided to hide their weakness. They built the power network. They created illusions of invincibility. They convinced the galaxy they were gods, so no one would dare challenge them. We became prisoners of our own mythology, Rythak said. We could not admit weakness. We could not evolve. We could only maintain the illusion while we slowly died. They reached a command center where other Valorum waited. Some looked defiant. Others looked resigned. All looked at the humans with a mixture of fear and curiosity. These are my allies, Rythak said. Officers and crew who believe as I do. The old way is finished. We must find a new way, or we will become extinct. Over the next hours, they shared information. The Valorum showed the humans everything. Ship designs, weapon systems, battle tactics, the location of every Valorum military asset in the galaxy, and most importantly, the command codes for the fleet heading to Earth. With these codes, you can communicate with the fleet, Rythak explained. You can show them proof that the Nexus is destroyed. You can show them that continued fighting serves no purpose. Some will ignore the evidence. Some are too committed to the old beliefs. But others may listen. You may be able to prevent the worst of the slaughter. Jiwon was recording everything, her mind working furiously to understand the technology. Why are you really doing this? She asked Rythak. What do you gain? A chance, Rythak said simply. A chance for my people to survive by changing instead of by hiding. You humans are young, aggressive, adaptable. You do not give up. You fight even when you should not be able to win. Perhaps we can learn from you. Perhaps together, we can build something better than either of us could build alone. Daeho studied, the alien's face trying to read emotions and features too different from human. Finally, he made his choice. If you're serious about this, then come with us. Come to Earth. Face the fleet alongside us. Prove that your words mean something. Rythak was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured to his companions. They spoke in their own language, rapid and musical. Finally, Rythak turned back to Daeho. 5 of us will come. The rest will stay to help evacuate this station and spread the truth to other Valorum worlds. Is this acceptable? It's a start, Daeho said. The return journey to Earth took 15 days. During that time, Jiwon worked with the Valorum engineers, learning everything she could. Suman and the other Marines trained with Valorum soldiers, discovering that in physical combat, humans were actually stronger. The Valorum had relied on technology for so long that their bodies had grown weak. Minho spent hours talking with Rythak about philosophy and war. You know, Minho said one evening, in all our myths about gods, there's always one truth. Gods never change. They stay the same forever. Maybe that's why they always lose in the end to heroes. Heroes grow. Heroes adapt. Heroes become more than they were. Then perhaps, Rythak said, It is time for my people to stop being gods and become heroes instead. When they finally reached Earth, the Valorum fleet was already there. 200 ships surrounded the planet, their weapons charged, ready to burn humanity from existence, but they had not fired. They were waiting for something. This is Captain Dae-ho Kim of the Resilient to Earth Defense Command. We're back, and we have guests who want to talk to the Valorum fleet. The response came from Fleet Admiral Yejin Cho herself. Captain, the Valorum have been broadcasting demands for your surrender. They say they will destroy one city every hour until you return and face judgment for destroying the Nexus. Tell them I'm here, Dae-ho said. And tell them I have proof that their war is already lost. What happened next would be remembered in history as the moment everything changed. Rythak broadcast on all Valorum frequencies. He showed them the destroyed Nexus. He showed them the failing power network. He showed them the truth about their civilization's decay. And he asked them a simple question. Do we die as myths? Or do we live as something real? The Valorum fleet did not respond immediately. For hours there was only silence. Earth's defense forces waited, weapons ready. Humanity held its breath, and Dae-ho stood on his bridge, wondering if they had saved Earth or simply delayed its destruction. The silence lasted for 3 hours. 3 hours while 200 Valorum warships surrounded Earth. 3 hours while humanity waited to learn if they would survive or burn. 3 hours that felt like eternity. Then, finally, a response came. It was not from the fleet commander. It was not from any single ship. It was a chaos of transmissions. Valorum vessels arguing with each other across every channel. Some demanded the destruction of Earth. Others called for retreat. The unity that had made the Valorum seem invincible was shattering in real time. Captain, one of the Valorum ships is breaking formation, Minho reported. His voice was tight with tension. It's moving toward us. Weapon status? Dae-ho asked. The ship's weapons are powered down, Ji-won said. She was monitoring every energy signature from the Valorum fleet. They're not attacking. I think they're surrendering. The Valorum ship transmitted a message. This is Commander Valesh of the cruiser Eternal Witness. I request permission to speak with Captain Dae-ho Kim and the one called Rythak. Rythak stepped forward on the Resilience bridge. He had been standing quietly in the corner, watching everything. Valesh was one of my instructors at the military academy. He is a good officer. Let him speak. The view screen activated, showing a Valorum commander who looked old even by their standards. His armor was scratched and worn. His face showed exhaustion. Rythak, you were always too honest for your own good. I see you have finally found someone who appreciates that quality. Commander Valesh, Rythak said with respect, the war is over. You know this. I know that the Council lied to us, Valesh replied. I know that we have maintained an illusion while our people died in secret. I know that these humans destroyed in one day what we spent 10,000 years building. But I do not know if the war is over. Many in the fleet want revenge. Many believe that even without the network we can still destroy Earth. Can you? Dae-ho asked, joining the conversation. Valesh looked at him. Perhaps. We still have ships, weapons, and soldiers, but we have been fighting on emergency power since the network collapsed. Our ships are failing. Our systems are dying. We could destroy your world, Captain Kim. But it would be the last thing we ever did. And for what? To prove that we were once mighty? To die as myths rather than live as something less? You could live as something more, Ji-won said. She had been working at her station, but now she looked up at the screen. Your technology is incredible. Your knowledge spans millennia. Imagine what you could achieve if you stopped pretending to be gods and started working with others as equals. Equals. Valesh repeated the word as if tasting it. We have not been equals with anyone for so long. I am not sure we remember how. Then learn, said Admiral Yejin Cho. She had joined the communication from Earth Defense Command. Commander Valesh, I am Fleet Admiral Yejin Cho of Earth. I have fought in 3 wars. I have seen the best and worst of my species. And I can tell you that nothing built on fear lasts forever. Your civilization has stood for 10,000 years, but it was dying slowly. You said it yourself. This could be a chance for something better. Valesh was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was different. Softer. More uncertain. More real. What would you have us do? Stand down, Admiral Cho said. Power down your weapons. Enter orbit around the moon, not Earth. We will send diplomats to discuss terms. Not surrender terms. Partnership terms. You have knowledge we need. We have adaptability you need. Together we might both survive what's coming. What's coming? Valesh asked. The galaxy is bigger than both our species, Deho said. There are threats out there we haven't even discovered yet. The Valorum spent 10,000 years pretending to be invincible, instead of preparing for real dangers. That ends now. For both of us. More Valorum ships began to break formation, not all of them. Perhaps a third of the fleet moved to join Valesh near the moon. The rest remained around Earth, weapons still charged, still hostile. The Valorum fleet was splitting into factions right before everyone's eyes. One of the hostile ships fired. The energy beam lanced toward Earth's surface, aimed at the capital city. It would have killed millions, but the Eternal Witness moved to intercept, putting itself between the attack and the planet. The beam struck Valesh's ship, tearing through its weakened shields and into its hull. The ship did not explode, but it was crippled, venting atmosphere and debris. All Earth Defense Forces return fire on that vessel, Admiral Cho commanded. Her voice was cold as ice. Valorum ships allied with Commander Valesh, you are authorized to defend yourselves. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The Valorum ship that had fired stood alone. Valesh's allies and Earth's defense fleet fired simultaneously. The hostile ship's shields collapsed in seconds. Its hull was torn apart by focused fire. It died quickly, and Deho felt no satisfaction in watching it. The rest of the hostile Valorum fleet hesitated. They had just seen one of their own destroyed by a combined human and Valorum force. The balance had shifted. They were no longer the invincible Valorum facing weak humans. They were soldiers far from home, low on power, facing an enemy that refused to give up and allies who had chosen a different path. One by one, they powered down their weapons. By the end of the day, the entire Valorum fleet had surrendered. Not to Earth, not to anyone. They simply stopped fighting because continuing made no sense. Commander Valesh, badly wounded but alive, became the spokesperson for those who wanted peace. Others chose to leave, to return to Valorum space and figure out what to do with a civilization whose foundation had crumbled. The war that should have destroyed humanity lasted less than 24 hours after the fleet arrived at Earth. The war that the Valorum had spent 10,000 years avoiding fighting honestly ended with a whimper, not the blaze of glory their myths had promised. 5 years later, Deho stood at a memorial on the edge of the Calveth Nebula. The monument was simple, a wall of stone with names carved into it. Human names and Valorum names side by side, the names of everyone who had died in the brief, brutal conflict that changed the galaxy. He traced his fingers over Captain Kangman Seo's name. Over the crew of the Thunder, over the hundreds of others who had sacrificed everything so that others might live. You still come here, said a voice behind him. Rithak approached, moving slowly. 5 years of working with humans had taught him their customs. He did not tower over Deho anymore. He walked beside him as an equal. I remember them, Deho said simply. Someone should. Many remember, Rithak said. On my world, there are monuments to the humans who destroyed our lives and freed us from our mythology. Your names are spoken with respect. Some say you are the new legends. Deho laughed, short and bitter. We're not legends. We're just soldiers who did what we had to do. Perhaps that is what real legends are, Rithak said. Not myths, not gods, just people who stepped into the blaze when others would not. They stood together in silence, human and Valorum, looking at the names of the dead. In orbit above them, joint human-Valorum research stations studied the remains of the Nexus, trying to understand the technology and build something better. On Earth, Valorum refugees learned to farm and build and create instead of simply maintaining ancient power. In Valorum space, new governments formed, free from the crushing weight of pretending to be divine. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still mistrust, still those who wanted to return to the old ways. But it was real. It was honest. It was progress. Jiwan had become the director of the Combined Technology Initiative, working with Valorum engineers to develop systems that used their knowledge and human innovation. She rarely slept still, but now it was because she was excited about the work, not terrified of what would happen if she failed. Yijin served as the human ambassador to the Valorum Council, helping to build diplomatic frameworks that treated both species as equals. She was as calm and unshakable as ever. facing down politicians with the same steady resolve she had once used against enemy warships. Minho ran a joint military training program where human pilots and Valorum warriors learned from each other. He had finally found a challenge that matched his reckless courage, teaching former gods how to be mortal. Suman had been promoted 6 times and now commanded her own ship, leading exploration missions into uncharted space. She was no longer the nervous young marine who had stood in ancient ruins. She was a leader who understood that courage meant being afraid and going forward anyway. And Deho, who had led them all into the blaze, taught history at Earth's military academy. He told students about the Valorum, about the war, about the price of victory. He made sure they understood that wars were not glorious. Sacrifice was not beautiful. Death was not poetic, but sometimes fighting was necessary. Sometimes standing firm was the only option. Sometimes ordinary people had to do extraordinary things because no one else would. We were known as timeless myths, Rethak said quietly, still looking at the memorial. Eternal and invincible. But myths do not change. Myths do not grow. Myths do not live. No, Deho agreed. They don't, but people do. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when they have to walk through fire to do it. Behind them, the nebula glowed with purple and gold light, beautiful and strange. Somewhere in that vast cloud of gas and starlight, the ruins of the Nexus drifted.